Welcome to day 27 of the 30-day MyDFIR SOC Analyst Challenge, which is a challenge that I created for the sole purpose of helping aspiring SOC analysts obtain practical experience in 30 days. If you're interested in following along with this challenge, I would highly recommend that you pause the video and start from day 1, if you haven't done so already. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to investigate an RDP brute force alert and what are some of the things that you can look for. Let's get started. When it comes to investigating RDP brute force attacks, we can pretty much do the same thing that we did for our SSH brute force attack. It's a different protocol, but the same methodology will apply. First and foremost, head over to your web GUI and click on the hamburger icon. From there, I'll scroll down and click on Alerts under Security. Now, depending on your data, you may or may not have a lot of alerts, but do make sure that your time frame is set to 30 days. And I have a total of 414 alerts. But I do have 6 alerts that are RDP brute force. So what I'll do is just click on the filter, and this will filter for only RDP brute force alerts. Scrolling down, I'll select the first one, which is this one right here, that triggered on 15/15/52 on August 14th. I can click on the view details icon just to see a little bit more information here. And I do see the source IP of 81.163.20.41, and it was using the username of administrator. And there was 6 events. Now, if you recall, in our SSH alert, we did modify the alert to automatically create a ticket within OS ticket. So let's do the same for our RDP brute force. Now, since I'm lazy, I'll go ahead and open up my rules, and I'll be copying my SSH brute force alert. So I'll click on Edit Rule Settings, go over to my Actions, and let's just copy the body here. Now I'll click on my detection rules and I'll select RDP brute force, head over to Edit Rule Setting, go into Actions, click on Webhook, and my OS ticket should automatically be selected. I'll paste in my body here and then save changes. What I'll also do is click on Edit Rule Settings, go over to my schedule, and make sure that it is running every 1 minute. Now, if I go over to my notepad, whenever we're investigating brute force attacks, again, I want to know 4 things. The first one is the IP known to perform brute force activity? The second is, are any other users affected by the IP? The third is, were any of them successful? And finally, if so, what activity occurred after the successful login? Now, if I take a look at the alert, we see that the IP is this 81 IP address. I'll go ahead and copy that and paste it into my notepad, and it is targeting administrator. To find out number 1, again, I'll be using Abuse IPDB and Gray Noise. Checking Abuse IPDB, we do see that this IP was reported 55 times and has a confidence of abuse of 48% as a recording. It is stemming from the country of Russia. And at the bottom, we do get reports of application RDP brute force, where the username is administrator and administrator and administrator. So administrator in different languages. Bottom, we do see spam or other hacking activities. RDP guard detected brute force attempt on RDP. Now let's check out Gray Noise. And we do see this IP classified as unknown intent. It says Gray Noise has identified scanning activity from this IP. However, we cannot determine its intent. It is still considered internet background noise since it is scanning the entire internet and not targeting you specifically. Click on Next. Suggested actions. As long as you're not running software vulnerable to the activity captured by Gray Noise, you can probably close out the alert. And it also gives you the reason for the close. And that is why I absolutely love Gray Noise whenever I'm performing an investigation that has an IP address. Looking at the tags, we can see it's an RDP crawler, so that's pretty cool. And again, if you do log in, you can get additional information. But this should be enough. Simply by taking a look at our Abuse IPDB and looking at Gray Noise, we can see that this IP is associated with RDP activity. I'll say yes. The second question, are any other users affected by this IP? Let's head over to our Discover and make sure our time frame is set to 30 days. Copy out the IP address and hit enter. Within 30 days, we get 245 events. Now, if I search for the field name of user.name, we can see that it's 100% this administrator account. So answering number 2, are any other users affected by this IP? No, only administrator. Were any of them successful? This is very important. If you recall, successful authentications will generate an event code of 4624 under security. With that being said, I'll type in and event.code:4624. And there are no results matching my search criteria. Just to make sure that my query works as expected, I am going to remove everything except for my event code. And yes, I do get some hits, 148. So that means that my query was actually correct and there was no successful authentication from this particular IP address. What this means is that we're pretty safe. Were any of them successful? No. If so, what activity occurred after the successful login? Well, nothing, because none of it was successful. Now, if you recall in our previous video when we went over our Mythic C2, we did brute force our RDP server, and I did capture that IP address. And that IP was actually 181.215.182.151. So this was the IP I was using to brute force our target server. Now, if I were to do the same checks, so for example, is this IP known to perform brute force activity? Well, let's take a look. Using abuse IPDB, this was reported 7 times with a confidence abuse of 25%. Scrolling down, it says DDoS attack, brute force, web spam, bad web bot, and that's about it. So we do know that this IP is known to perform some nefarious activities. What about gray noise? This particular IP address would be quite interesting because it was not observed by gray noise. Take a look at what it says. Gray noise has not observed this IP mass scanning the internet within the past 90 days. If your organization has observed this IP, it is likely targeting your organization, industry, or software stack. And that is why I'm interested. So if I click on I am interested in this IP, we can now create an alert for this particular IP by using gray noise. Again, gray noise, absolutely amazing tool. But let's go back down to our questions here. Is this IP known to perform brute force activity? Kind of, but I will say yes because by using abuse IPDB, it was reported for brute force. Any other users affected by this IP? Well, let's take a look. So I already searched for this particular IP and it gave me 106 events. Clicking on username, we can see 2 user accounts. The first one is administrator and the second one is a computer account. We know this is a computer account because it ends in a dollar symbol. Honestly, we aren't really too worried about host accounts, at least for now. But instead, what we want to look for are actual user accounts whenever we're performing this particular check, which in our case, only administrator was targeted. The answer will be no, only administrator. Were any of them successful? Let's do an and event.code:4624. And we have 3 events. So that means there was definitely a successful logon. Now we can say, were any of them successful? Yes. If so, what activity occurred after the successful logon? Well, that is a great question. Now we can start jotting down exactly what time the successful logon occurred. In our case, it was August 12th, 2024 at 19:56:05. Now, if you're like me, you might be wondering, what time zone is this? And that's a great question. To determine the time zone, you want to click on the hamburger icon and scroll down, click on Stack Management, and at the bottom under Kibana, click on Advanced Settings. And from here, we can see time zone. The default time zone is set to the browser. And honestly, we don't want that. Instead, we want UTC. So I'll click on Save Changes and reload the page. Now let's go over to our Discover. And you might notice that my time doesn't change, and that's because on my laptop itself, it is set to UTC. But if it was set to, let's say, Eastern Standard, then this timestamp should change accordingly. In fact, let's do a test. I'll go over to Advanced Settings, change this to US Eastern, hit Save, and reload. I'll refresh our Discover here, and our time is changed. Now it says 15:56:05, but I'll change it back to UTC time. That way it's just a lot more easier to work with. So now we know the time zone is UTC. And what exactly occurred after the successful logon? Well, what we can do is expand the event and scroll down until we find the host name, which in our case, since we only have one host, it is the MyDFIR-Win-Steven-Rocks. I can filter for that particular value, and I will also include the username of administrator. The next thing to do is to take a look at what is called the logon ID, aka logon identifier. This will capture all of the activity that occurred during that logon session. Scrolling down, I do see this target logon ID as this particular value. I'll copy this value and paste it into my query. Type in and that. Now what I can do is remove my IP address and the event code 4624. So leaving it like this. Now I have 3 additional events. And if we were to follow the chain of events, at the bottom, we can see that, hey, there was a special privilege assigned to new logon. We see this when an account logs in successfully and has administrator privileges, which in our case, it does because our user was administrator. And immediately, the account was logged off. What this tells me is that there was likely a scan that occurred, which there was. We did use Crowbar to perform a RDP brute force attack, and it did find that password successfully and exited out. Now, if I were to go back, and let's use the one at the top, use the latest logon ID for this one here. I'll copy that and then modify my query just like so. Remove everything else except for administrator and the logon ID. Hit update. We still get 3 events, and if you take a look at the time, it began on 20:01:28, 20:01:28, 20:01:33. So this particular session was likely another automated session. I'll click on back. There was another logon that occurred on 20:01:21, which is this one right here. I'll expand that and go over to my logon ID, copy that, and I'll paste that in there. Now we do get another 3 events, but if you take a look at the time, there was a logon at 20:01:21. The account logged off at 1:13:34 on August 13th. That is quite interesting. Now we have a potential end time of this compromise. Now I do say potential because we aren't sure, but at least we can start writing down potential end time and paste that in there. And now as an analyst, it is our responsibility to figure out what happened here. Isn't that cool? So as you work this out, you want to start thinking about, okay, I am going to start at 1956:05 as my starting date on August 12th, and I'll put the ending date as August 13th, 2024 at 1:13:34 UTC. And then you can start searching for things like process creations, persistence mechanisms, any potential lateral movements, any exfiltration attempts. What about command and control? You can think of a lot of things that can happen within this time frame. And again, you'll learn so much more in the MyDFIR SOC Analyst course, where we actually go through investigations like this, and we fill in the gaps. In the next video, we'll be investigating Mythic C2, and I'll go over some of the activity that particular agent had generated. Now, you might notice that when you're investigating brute force attacks, it is pretty much the same thing regardless of protocol, and that is the beauty of investigations. In the beginning, it will be quite time consuming because you simply don't know what to look for. But the more you learn about the tactics and techniques while thinking big picture, it becomes a lot easier. And again, I do teach this in the MyDFIR SOC Analyst course. In the next video, we'll go over one last alert, and that will be our Mythic C2 agent that we created and executed back on day 21. As a reminder, I'll be doing a giveaway where one lucky winner will win a free voucher for the MyDFIR SOC Analyst course. And additionally, there will be 3 one-month passes for TryHackMe up for grabs. Details are provided in the description down below. If you're an aspiring SOC analyst, I would highly encourage you to participate so you can level up your practical skills. Thank you so much for watching, and subscribe if you want to. Remember to stay curious and do things differently.